Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. This week we've just got a quick update to do on the little Heng Long truck. Last time we fitted the prototype not very mini light controller, and it worked, but it was a bit exposed sitting out in the bed. It's been a couple of weeks now and the proper boards have now arrived. They're a far better size for the small truck. With the components fitted it looks like this. It was a bit tight hand soldering those chips, but that's the price for the small footprint. Now, I've still not completed the firmware, so it's still running the same code that the prototype was. The basics are working, the light modes, brake lights and reverse, but the planned advanced features are still waiting to be implemented. Right, I think by now we should all know how to remove the cab. It's the two small self-tappers at the back that screw into the chassis, and the two at the front that hold the bumper on. Pop the bumper off and the cab should just lift away, and we do of course still have the headlights to disconnect. Then we've got the two screws holding the battery tray on. Remove them and lift the tray off, being very careful about the antenna. And now we've got the access we need to swap the prototype out for one of the final boards. First we can disconnect the prototype's connectors. There's the two that go to the receiver, the ESC and the tail lights. And now we just need to peel it off the servo tape in the bed and put it to one side. The new board is designed with the 3-channel FlySky receiver in mind. It will work with any receiver of course, but its dimensions are designed to roughly fit in the nice flat area on the top of the receiver. It sticks out a little bit at one end, but then so does the antenna, so it shouldn't be much of a problem in most models. Before we fit it, we need to pop the receiver off so we can bundle up the ESC servo lead and stow it away in the hole with the steering servo's lead. Stick the receiver back down and we're ready to install the light controller. There's really not much to it. A bit of servo tape on the receiver, peel off the backing and stick down the controller chips down on the top. This does expose one little shortcoming with the PCB layout though. To keep the surface mount parts on one side, usually called a single-sided load, the status LED is now nicely stuck up against the servo tape, so you can't see it. Not ideal, but you only really need to see it if the controller isn't responding to the controls. The 3-pin connector now connects up to the throttle channel on the receiver, and the single pin connects to the signal pin on channel 3. The ESC servo connector, rather than connecting to the receiver, now plugs into the 3-pin connector on the controller. The wires should really get stuffed out of the way too. It's never a great idea having loose wires flapping around. With all the vibration these trucks see, the solder joints can fatigue and fail. Next we've got the LEDs to solder up to the board. Now I didn't use a connector on this one as they do take up a lot of space, and the goal of this board was to keep it as small as possible. Once the bodywork gets painted up and detailed, we'll be soldering the wires directly to the PCB. For now though, since it's going to have to come apart a few more times, we will use the connectors from the prototype. To solder the wires, first we need to strip some insulation. We'll only need a couple of millimeters exposed. Tin the ends, tin the pads on the board, just so there's a nice little bump of solder on them. Okay, the first pad is the positive supply. We need to solder the common positive leads together on the pad. To make it a little easier, the positive pads are a bit bigger than the rest, so you can comfortably get 2 or 3 wires soldered to them. The next 3 pads are the switch negatives, first being the headlights, then the tail lights, and third is the reverse light. There's also 3 more pads on the board which give another positive and 2 aux channels. These will be for things like the roof lights, and they will have 8 modes configurable on the board with different effects. Wig-wag, strobe, that kind of thing. Before we put it all back together, it's a good idea to do a quick test and make sure all the things are doing what they should. We can plug in the tail lights, the battery, and then power it up. After a couple of seconds, the tail light should be active and working. Yeah, well, they look okay. Great stuff. So now we can put it all back together. The battery tray goes back on first, being very careful not to pinch any of the wires as we fit the 2 screws. Next the headlights can plug in, and now we can carefully sit the cab down on the chassis. We need to take care to have the headlight wires routed around the outside of the battery tray so they don't get caught up in anything. Just like hardwiring the LEDs to the board, we'll end up gluing the headlight wires down inside the cab. Right now it's going to be easier to be able to remove the headlights when we paint the cab, so the wires are a bit loose in there. The bumper goes back on with its 2 screws. It's a much nicer fit now, there's not a huge bundle of wires going to the prototype controller. Lastly, there's the 2 screws at the back of the cab to go in, and that's it, all fitted, ready to go. We can pop the LiPo in under the bonnet, connect it up and turn on the radio. And there we go, all up and running. I'm really hoping I'm going to get some time to really get stuck into the firmware and documentation before too long. Same with the wireless add-on for the big light controller. Which reminds me, I need to find some time to assemble some big light controllers to keep in stock too. But that's about it for this week, so I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, by all means hit that like button. If you're not subscribed, you might want to do that so you don't miss future videos. We've got another kit build brewing, actually 2, but one of them's only a Diddy one. As always, thanks for watching, bye guys!